against the current, of course. The river flows north at this point. Stops at Crump's Landing, meets Wallace. Wallace is on the John J. Road, and they lash the boats together, and that's where they, he figures out, okay, they're not attacking Wallace here. It must be at Pittsburgh, so I'm going to go on down. Grant leaves Wallace orders, hold what you got here, wait until you get orders from me. That's the first mistake, of course. Obviously, the fight is at Pittsburgh Landing, so why not send Wallace on down there? Well, it will be nearly noon before Wallace actually gets these orders. Through kind of a comedy of errors, Grant gets to Pittsburgh Landing, starts moving reinforcements out, ammunition, all that. Oh yeah, I better send word to Wallace. Well, he sends Rawlins to tell somebody, a staff officer, to go to Wallace. Rawlins goes back and tells the quartermaster, Baxter, go back to Crump's Landing and tell Wallace to come forward. Baxter says, well, I don't think I can handle that kind of responsibility. Write it down for me. So they go on board the Tigris and they write it down. Now, if we still had that note, that would solve a lot of problems. We don't know what the note says, and in fact, Grant later admits that I really can't say what the note says. I never saw it. I didn't write it. It was all past me. Grant, of course, says, is that a fish?
Yeah.
Grant says the order says for Wallace to come to Pittsburgh Landing, which Wallace would have marched. By this time, he's concentrated at Stony Lonesome, 2.5 or so miles out. He's got one brigade here, one brigade at Stony Lonesome, one brigade at Adamsville. I live basically at Stony Lonesome. So he concentrates there, the opening of what's called the Shun Pike. So he has two routes to go to the Army. Had he gone to Pittsburgh Landing, he would have just moved down the river road, because by that point, the Wallace Bridge is passable, as we'll find out later this evening. Wallace says the order says to come to the right of the Army, which is Sherman at Shiloh Church. So logically, from Stony Lonesome to Shiloh Church, you march down the Shun Pike to the barbecue joint, and then take the left there and go across Owl Creek just like we did. Stop and eat barbecue on the way, I guess. A banana pudding. That's the whole delay is predicated on getting the banana pudding at the barbecue joint.
Careful, there may be a book about that.
Theory.
Revisionist history. So which choice do you take? Well, it depends on what the order says. We don't know what the order says, because the staff officer took it and he says he put it in his belt. I'm wearing my good Park Service belt here, and lost it. Whether that's the case or not, who knows? We don't know what the order said, though, and of course we'll never know. At any rate, Wallace, Baxter comes back, tells Wallace, okay, basically, Wallace hears go to the right of the Army, so okay, I'm gonna go out to Stony Lonesome, move down the Shun Pike, come in with on Sherman's right. Now the problem is, all along as he's marching on the Shun Pike, he keeps getting staff officers and so on, cavalrymen and all that from Grant, saying hurry up, and by the time he gets to what is Clear Creek, where I'll show you a little bit later on, Rowley, Grant staff officer Rowley, arrives and basically says, where are you going? He said, well, I'm going to the right of the Army like Grant told me to. He says, takes him kind of to the side, don't you know that we may lose this thing? You've got to march to Pittsburgh Landing. And Wallace says, he admits, I was shaking, and so he has to turn back around, come up and find a crossover road, rather than marching all the way back to Stony Lonesome, back to Crump's, and then down the river road, find a crossover road from the Shun Pike to the river road, and then down across the Wallace Bridge to Pittsburgh Landing. That's in a nutshell what's going on. Now we'll go out and see all this. But the whole thing, again, is miscommunication. If we had the order, we would know. And I often liken it to, the old game we played as kids. If I whispered in your ear a message, and you whispered all the way around, by the time I got to you, it'd be completely different. And so this thing's going from Grant to Rawlins to Baxter to Wallace, and so that's only 4. But who knows what it could have said. But the key thing here is it absolutely ruins Wallace's career, because Grant a little bit makes him out to be the scapegoat. All day long, if Wallace had been there, we wouldn't have fallen back and all that kind of stuff. I think that's a little unfair. I'm a Grant fan, but I'm not afraid to call Grant out when I think he's a little, too full of himself. I'm convinced Grant has a PR machine that throws people under the bus if necessary, and that happened with several people. Wallace and elsewhere. In fact, there's an investigation into this later in actually April in the Vicksburg campaign, The War Department says, all right, Grant, I need statements from all of your staff officers and all that. And you read those statements dated April 1863 about what's going on in April 1862. And Rowley and McPherson, who now is a Corps commander, the 17th Corps, Rawlins, and all these guys write out their statements, and it is amazing how similar they are, all telling the same story. And you know what happened? Grant got them all together one night on the boat in Magnolia and said, all right, boys, we got to get our story straight because they're wanting answers. Wallace is raising Cain about this and wanting a new command, and we got to get our story straight, you know. So I'm convinced something, you know, like that happened. When it really probably wasn't Wallace's fault. He was just caught up in the miscommunication and you know, no good choices. What do you do? You got to pick one or the other, and you don't know which way it's gonna turn. But it basically ruins his life. And there's a great book. Have y'all read Gail Stevens' Shadow of Shiloh? I love titles and tinkering with titles, and